Hello, hello. Welcome back to the next day, the fallout after crisis. We've been here before. We've been here too many times in recent years, haven't we? I can never tell if I feel better the next day or if I'm just a little more numb to the difficulties and the pain that we've been having. I've recorded 2 podcasts already today. One with Andy, Footy with an Edge, and Samix, which will be out a little bit later, I think, on Andy's channel. And then another with Phil, which will be out in a little bit. And they were very, very interesting ones, that's for sure. Really, really interesting discussions in general on everything that's going on right now. Kind of crazy, but very interesting discussions overall. But I've got a lot to talk about today as the drama kicks up in the world of United. Happy New Year, Naveen. Good to see you here as well. How angry is Phil? Oh, very angry. But I gotta admit, man, it was one of my favorite podcasts that I've recorded with him. And the reason for it, which I talked about at the end on the podcast, is that we were sat there practically yelling at each other for 25 minutes. You probably will really enjoy the video. I think you're going to love it, to be honest, no matter where you're at, what side you're on and all that. But the reason I loved it so much is because not only did we sit there having, arguments and things like that, but because you can do it to each other, and we both adore each other and are great friends. You know what I mean? And that's what matters. And at the end of it, neither of us can sit there after massively yelling and disagreeing and having all of that and have it be personal and get into the absolute bullshit that all these faceless, nameless people do on Twitter, constantly hiding behind their screen names and things like that and not coming to actually speak. And that's the best part about it, but that's how it should be. And that's why I've always felt that, one, I like doing the lives and the videos and the discourse on here is because we can have that. And that's how it's supposed to be. What I don't respect is the people who hide. They never show their face. They never say a word. They just sit there doing whatever they're going to do. And everything becomes a personal attack instead of just a difference in opinion. And that to me is sad. And that tells me that you've already lost when you have to make it that way. And that, because we can all sit there and think when we have these discussions, Phil and I, and have these arguments and things, how many times we've been wrong when we talk to each other. And he might have, something he's saying now that's wrong. And I'll have something I'm saying now that's going to end up being very wrong in the future. And that's the fun of it. We see things differently. That's why I always do that. And it goes the other way too. I've said before, sometimes when we're doing better and Phil's negative and people give him a hard time and they say, why are you doing this podcast with Phil? It's exactly that. That's the exact reason why I do it, because we have a difference of opinion. And I think that's the best part about it, is being able to debate with people that you think differently from, instead of just sitting there and agreeing the whole time, while still maintaining the love and the connection and the friendliness and all of that. So, that would be my my New Year's wish for this dumbass community. There I go, insulting people, is to stop being so stupid, because you're not doing yourself any favor. You know what I mean? And there's so many people that whenever we win, they hide. Whenever we lose, they come out attacking you personally. I don't care, man. Just come have a conversation, and don't make it always about the personal attacks and things like this. It's so silly. It's so pointless. But Happy New Year to all of you guys. I hope some of you maybe New Year's already, some of you not. I appreciate you all very much. It's been a really, really interesting 2025 for sure. And 2026 will certainly be crazier than ever. No doubt about that. I imagine that quite a lot of people are busy this evening as we head into New Year's and all of that as well. So I expect it'll be a little bit quiet. But But we're also, of course, approaching the January window, and you know, you know, it's meaningful. One second. It's very, very meaningful that United address the things that they need to do in the window. There's no doubt about that. They have to. We can't afford to pass it up. I don't generally do anything for New Year's. We'll probably be in bed by 10 or 11 o'clock or something like that. But look, here's what I want to discuss first and foremost, okay? Seems like I have more qualms with random fans than the state of play. No, the way we play keeps me up at night all the time. But my job here is having discussions, and my job here is sitting there. United don't, come after me making horrible accusations every time we lose a game simply because I have a difference of opinion to them. It's not me. You could flip that around the opposite. It seems people are more worried about what I think than United. But it's different. But look, here's what I wanted to do for this video, okay, for this live today. Tomorrow I'm gonna make a full year in review. I've got a whole bunch of things I want to show and give it some ratings and comparisons and things like that. But I want to give my perspective on a few things and say the parts of it that I really don't like in terms of discussion and where we're at, and explain my view, my opinion, my perspectives, and all that, because I think that they're very, very interesting. Because regardless, I think I want to see what people think about it first and foremost. All right. Number one is this. All right. I'm gonna address 4 talking points that I see all the time that I just don't understand. And look, I certainly take it upon myself. You can say this is egotistical or something. I don't give a shit. I take it upon myself to try and bring what I think is sense to the community. You could say it's bullshit. That's fine with me, man. I don't say things for any reason except I firmly believe them. And I'm a big believer in trusting what I see and observe. But that doesn't just mean the eye test. There's actual data. There's actual factual shit that backs these things up, and I love to use that. I've been running businesses and helping in businesses for my entire life as a career. I know what data looks like, and I know what you can properly use to evaluate things, and I trust my instincts on that. And I've had a lot of success with that in my general life. So of course I'm going to take that into account. I have the things I like to see in general. Here's 4 talking points, and then I'm going to show you a little bit of data. All right. First of all, let's talk about Patrick Dorgu from yesterday. Here's where I'm at on this. This is the part of the discussion I don't love, and what I feel is super hypocritical. All right. Do you guys remember after City? I made a video and we were on lives, and there was all this talk about how the system is shit because it puts Patrick Dorgu in attacking
Happy New
positions.
Year, James. I'm just wondering, in the summer, if Ruben does go, what sort of manager do you think Ineos would go for? Much love.
It's a tough question, honestly. What type of manager? I don't know what you mean. Still somebody who's going to have to be around to build the club. I think they'd go back for somebody that they liked before, because there was a lot of names that Wilcox and such liked at that point in time. I wouldn't be surprised if they went for somebody like, you're going to hate the suggestion, but like, if you look at their original list, McKenna, Pochettino, these were guys they went for before that I think could be interesting. I don't think they'll go for Glasner. At the same time, they might flip around and say, all right, we need somebody with a bit more experience now. But I don't think it's even a discussion at the moment, to be honest. They might go and find some under the radar guy. Maybe they go for like Frank Hayes, who, left Nice because of all the shit that was going on there. But I have to give it more thought because it hasn't been thought about. And I tend to give my answers and opinions on the basis of what I know. And what I know is that there's nobody in the frame. So we'll leave it at that for now. I don't have an answer to it. I'm just looking at who they liked before. Right now, there's zero anything to just give me an answer on that. So I don't have anything for you. Let's talk about it later on in the season. And I do want to talk about transfers as well, and we'll certainly talk about Amorim, no doubt about that. We will certainly talk about Amorim, as well, and where we are and everything. But yeah, thank you for the donation and Happy New Year to you as well. First of all, let's talk about Patrick Dorgu, okay? After the City game, and I remember months ago, there's all this talk about how the system is crap because it puts Dorgu in attacking positions, okay? He gets one game, one half, 35 minutes, really, against Newcastle of being in the right wing, attacking, and suddenly the conversation flips that... the conversation flips that we didn't win because Patrick Dorgu wasn't in an attacking position. That's bullshit. That's hypocrisy. That argument right there, I'm not having it. It was nonsense. Now, I want to back up for a moment and say something funny about this. I 100% think that Patrick Dorgu should have played on the right side. I didn't care if it was a 4-2-3-1 or a 3-4-3. But I've been saying that for months, that Patrick Dorgu should be on the right and that he's a much better attacker on the right than he is on the left, cutting in on his left foot, and that I think the angles would help him a lot more. So I do think that's something yesterday that Amorim got wrong in which side, but I do not accept the people sitting there who spent months abusing the kid and saying he was shit in those positions, saying that you never wanted him to get into attacking positions, saying this is everything wrong with the system, turning around and now saying that Dorgu should have played in the attacking position. That's bullshit. You're a hypocrite. Stick to some sort of point, okay? But you are right. He should have played on the right side. He should have played on the right side because he's better there. But that's not why we lost, or didn't win, rather. It's just another hypothetical. We've only seen a little bit of minutes. It's a first opinion. But at the same time, Patrick Dorgu's been good for multiple games. Patrick Dorgu should have had multiple assists against Aston Villa. Patrick Dorgu should have had assists yesterday. Patrick Dorgu should have had his goal in the game against Newcastle. Do you think we're trying to move to a high-quality Brighton Brentford where changing the manager won't perfect performances that much? Absolutely, yes. And that's worth discussion. That's worth discussing as well. Definitely is. It's definitely that. Okay? Definitely that's the idea, and that's why we have to take a long-term view on it and all of that. But the idea that Patrick Dorgu was now he's a right-sided player and that's platforming him. No, I remember when he first arrived, Amorim played him on the right and people lost their fucking mind about it, okay? But people are sitting there, the point is the argument itself is very, very flawed, okay? Because just admit, you didn't know. I have had really no big problem with Patrick Dorgu receiving the ball where he receives it because he's a young player who I think is going to get a lot better. He played very well off of the left against Aston Villa and should have had assists. He should have had assists yesterday. It is what it is, okay? He hasn't been here long. He's young. He played very well against Newcastle. He got all of the, it's just whatever, all right? It's just a very, very hypocritical argument that suddenly that's the biggest issue after most of these people were saying the system sucks because it puts Patrick Dorgu in attacking positions. Now you're saying change the system and put Patrick Dorgu as our right winger. Go to hell. Keep your opinions at least somewhat consistent, at least, okay? I didn't care if it was 4-2-3-1, 3-4-3. Doesn't matter. I still think Dorgu's better on the right and Dalot on the left, even though Dalot's been sort of mediocre. I don't know what to say about Dalot right now. We can talk about Dalot a little later. That's one of the opinions, one of the arguments that doesn't hold water to me that I'll push back on. Because so many people were pushing against Dorgu being in attacking positions, and now suddenly it's okay. Nah, I ain't taking that. The next one. This copy-paste word that we've reverted to a 3 at the back. As soon as someone says we reverted to a 3 at the back, I sit there and I go, you can't think for yourself. Everybody's just copying that opinion over and over and over and over. reverted to a 3 at the back. Ruben Amorim has played a 3 at the back every single game since he arrived, and every single game at Sporting, and every single game at Casapia. You don't revert back after you played a different setup for 35 minutes and then got another injury, and it was just simply for a game. We didn't revert back to a 3 at the back. We play a 3 at the back. We attempted a 4 at the back for one game, and it was shit, and we spent 60 minutes defending. And that's where this is where, again, one of these hypocritical arguments, all right? We beat Wolves 4-1, 3 at the back. Same team. We lost a bunch of players, and we went 1-1. We didn't revert. We played the same formation and the same setup that we just beat them 4-1 not that long ago. The next week, they went out and had to get a 95th minute own goal to Arsenal for Arsenal to beat them. Like, we played the 3 at the back and won 4-1 against the same team 3 weeks ago. There's no reversion. We played 3 at the back against Bournemouth, and we scored a bunch of goals, and people were praising the performance. We played 3 at the back against Aston Villa, and people were praising the performance. Newcastle wasn't this sudden good performance, and we've been failing. The principles don't even change. And all the people saying that system isn't formation, why are you clamoring to change the formation then? It's the same system. It shouldn't matter that much. It doesn't. It doesn't, and it didn't. We weren't better against Newcastle than we were against Villa. We weren't better against Newcastle than we were against Bournemouth, and we weren't better against Newcastle than we were against Wolves. We didn't revert anything. Honestly, I would say the biggest difference maker for Wolves between the two games was having João Gomez back. He absolutely ran through our midfield for what it's worth, but, whatever. That's one of the ones that's so stupid. People were praising Bournemouth, praising the Villa game for their performances, which I'd agreed with. So we didn't revert back to a failing system. We reverted back to the system that had just won us and performed well for a bunch of games until we lost a bunch of players. We just played the same game as ever. It was just shit. We were shit. And that, I think, is on Amorim. In terms of the job, okay, I blame managers for a few things. 1 is their tactical idea. 2 is their man management. And 3 is how do they get their idea across and executed on the pitch, okay? I've always said, I think his system's fine. I don't give a shit about his system. You're going to see a wildly different number of opinions on that and where we are. Everybody's going to have difference of opinions there. That's totally fine. Everybody's going to. All good. Okay? The longer a manager is there, the less you can blame the players, in my opinion. The longer they're there, the less you can blame the players, because then you look at it and go, you still have, your job then is getting your ideas across and getting them executed and helping them get forward. It's still a bit too inconsistent for me. Even with players out, I still look at the intensity in the game sometimes and I go, it's inexcusable from the players and I would sack them off. But I raised concerns early in the year that sometimes I don't think there are high enough standards from Amorim for them. Let's take Joshua Zirkzee for example. Okay. If you take Joshua Zirkzee for an example, I thought he put in very low effort against Newcastle. And I said, all right, well, it'll be a little bit of a test of Amorim on that subject. When he comes out against Wolves, does he play with more intensity? He played like shit. I would have taken him off after 5 minutes. I don't care if he scored. He played like shit. His intensity was crap. He assisted them for the goal. He played awful. He defended awful. He wasn't sticking to his man. He wasn't pressing. He wasn't doing anything. So I look at that and I go, yeah, but we saw that against Newcastle. I wouldn't have given him the time of day after Newcastle. I was disgusted by the effort levels in that game. So I would say that, I would say that it's like, that was, to me, I don't like it. I don't like that. All right. I think that's, I thought that, but at the same time,
was cowardly yesterday, so disappointing.
Fair enough. At the same time, I look at that and I go, all right, so what could we have done without Zirkzee? Well, I know for a fact those kids aren't ready to play. And we had 0 senior subs on the bench. So I look at it and I go, so that's the mitigating factor in this. So the option is play the guy who's fucking wasting time on the pitch and looking for his move to the next one. Or throw in a youth player you know isn't ready to the dogs, and it's sink or swim. I don't admire the choice having to be made there. You know? Yeah, a typical under 21s game bench, right? I don't admire the choice being made there. Because I look at that and I go, yeah, but then look at how the kids are treated and tell me he should have started more. Tell me he should have started them. Look at that shit, dude. Jack Fletcher, you're only there because of your dad. Like, Jesus Christ. And these things are getting 10,000 likes on Twitter and shared all over the place. And we know these kids are on socials. We know these kids are on socials and stuff like that. You know? I definitely don't have a, I feel for them. There's a reason why I'm reticent to play the youth. One, because they are not ready. And two, the fact that then they play when they're not ready, they're going to get abused because our fan base sucks online anyway. A lot of the online fans are disgusting in the way that they treat people. Disgusting, man. Like, absolutely disgusting. Okay? The kids aren't ready. That's why we've been buying young players. I pointed this out the other day. It was very appropriate. And I was trying to make the point on,
Is it
on
me
why
but
we
have
buy
all
young.
recent goals conceded come from same area?
They all come from the same area. It's always the front right side. Every single one comes from the same area. Totally correct. Let me show this again because I made this point and then Paulie Questel replied, and then I made this point before the match, okay? Because I posted this graph here, all right, about how we played a ton of young players under Amorim, okay? And then he came to his own conclusion, which I think was correct. Having said all that, I can't blame a manager for not playing academy players because what if they just aren't that good? LVG handed out debuts left and right, and all but 2 of them stunk. United don't even have the best academy in their own city. The jump from academy football to Premier League football is larger than it's ever been. It's totally reasonable if no one in the academy is ready to make that jump. Maybe there's 1 kid in there, even 2 kids ready for the jump is very unrealistic. And I said in those last 2 tweets are, of course, the conclusion anyone should reach and the point at the end of it. This is before yesterday's game. And that's the reality. We don't have an academy with players that are ready for the first team. It's just not there. We need more young players. That doesn't mean they're not good talents. That doesn't mean they can't be. Ahmad wasn't ready till he went on loan for 2 seasons to Rangers and Sunderland, and he's one of the best talents I've ever seen. And at the youth level, he was absolutely taking the piss out of players. I remember watching him briefly for the under 21s at the time, and it was like, this is a joke. This guy's way beyond this level. He had to spend a couple years out on loan to become ready for the men's game. And Sunderland was an incredible loan. I don't think he would have been where he is now without that loan and the physicality and the experience of playing in the championship. They're just not ready, you know? And so then you look at it and go, cool, well, clamoring for youth, play them, Sir Alex threw in Mateta. Amorim doesn't have the bravery. Then you throw them on because you absolutely have to. They don't perform and they get abuse. And it's like, we don't have a choice. We don't have a choice in the matter, And so it's like, we could keep Zirkzee on languishing about the pitch like he's on holiday already. He's playing like he's on work notice, and or throw a youth on who's probably not going to help us. We're starved for choices. We are starved for choice here. We don't have all this opportunity. We have no bench strength. We don't have anybody fit. That's the problem that we're having there. So I take that and I go, yeah, I can criticize for sure Amorim for even starting Zirkzee, because I think it sends a bad message that you can get away with being shit sometimes. And I think he has a weakness there that I will criticize many, many, many times over. That I started criticizing earlier in the season, which was that I think that sometimes he lets players play through, like, there's certain things players cannot continue to play after, and effort is one of them. And I don't think that I can use the effort argument for most of the players on the pitch, but I can for Zirkzee. I was really disappointed once again, okay? And so now we can say, so then I look at that and I go, so now I'm going to turn around and blame him for taking Zirkzee off when he was showing no effort, which is what I wanted, because I wanted him to hold some standards for effort, on the pitch. And so at the very least, I could put a positive on that if I wanted to, and say he showed the standards that a senior football can get yanked off for a senior footballer can get taken off the pitch for a youth player because they don't put in the effort. That's a good message to send to the kids, even if they weren't that effective. That's a good message to send, even if it didn't work. That's a good message. That may be a positive. I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. But I have concerns with that aspect. I wouldn't have started Zirkzee, but then again, our only senior players were Malacia and fucking Yoro. Maybe you could have put Malacia at wing back and put Dorgu up front. Fuck me if that's your choice, okay? Whatever. But then your other option is to play a kid isn't ready. Isn't ready. That's irresponsible. And we'd have this, and you see the same discussion now, and they're different parts of the fan base, saying that he's poorly platformed Fletcher and these guys because they didn't perform right away. Fuck me, man. You just don't have a lot of choices here. So I that's the point, is that I don't know why I disagree with him starting Zirkzee, but I also think it would be wrong to have picked anybody from the bench. You're screwed. Sorry, Ruben, you're screwed. Everything you could do there is wrong. That's the truth. Anything you could have done in that game would have been wrong. And you can't guarantee that the other things would have changed the results, but anything you could have done there, any choice was wrong. Every choice was wrong. It's literally like the trolley problem. You're going to go out there and play a player who didn't put in a lot of application, give him another chance, or you're going to throw a youth on and potentially shake their confidence. And when they're not ready to play, trolley problem. Which one? I don't know. Maybe we should not put the fucking manager in front of the trolley to make that choice. That's all I'm saying. Maybe we shouldn't be in a position as a club where the manager has to pull the lever and decide who he's sacrificing. He sacrificed probably himself to a degree and Zirkzee to protect one of the youth players in that case. He could have thrown a youth player in, had them flounder, and have people saying, you're only starting because your dad is working at the club and shit like that. I don't know, man. I don't have the answers to that. I can see it in a lot of different ways. I can see valid criticisms both directions, but I just don't think we have enough options. That's the truth of it. And again, looking at it 2 weeks ago, it was doesn't use young players. Sir Alex threw in Mateta because he had to and he didn't have a choice. Now it's throwing them in as a problem. It's not, man. It's whatever. I've been saying for weeks, the reality is the academy has slipped. The academy hasn't been producing talents. And the guys who it's producing now, there's good ones. I really rate Fletcher. I've been talking about Mateta for ages. Him getting his debut is like a very exciting moment for me. But they're not ready. They're good talents, and I think they have a chance to make it at United, but they're not ready. I know that. They're not ready. And we're finally getting somewhere. He took the under-18s job to avoid the nepotism claims, and now it's nepotism. He has no involvement with the first team, Darren Fletcher. None. He doesn't have any involvement. He used to be technical director. He took a step down into the academy. He doesn't have any involvement. What an insane, horrible thing to say about somebody. They've earned it on their own merit. You know what I mean? So yeah, there's that. And then the last thing was this, okay? The last thing was this. Was this point on 2024, 2025 and all of that. Because I've seen people say this was our worst year. Well, no, it actually wasn't. That's the crazy part about it. Here's a crazy stat for you, because I always bring this point up, which is that I always say this, and somehow I don't think people get it. Like, I was discussing with Phil on this, and so you'll see it in the podcast. And again, respectfully, we disagree on this point, but respectfully, he said every manager's got to be judged on the basis of, like, you have to judge look at their whole tenure and say, what did they do? We should compare Ten Hag's first season to Ruben Amorim's first season, and that's whether they were successful or not. And to me, I think that's bonkers, because you're making an assumption that they're starting at the same point, okay? You're making an assumption that they're starting at the same exact position. You're making an assumption, you're saying that every time a manager joins, they're starting from the same position as the last manager, as every manager. It's just some mythical United should be in fourth type of thing. That makes no sense. Every manager starts from where the last manager ended. That's how life works. And I made the example that you roll a ball down a hill, you don't compare the top. Ten Hag goes to the top and then rolls it all the way to the bottom of the hill, and then the next guy's to pick up the ball at the bottom of the hill. You don't say, well, you should already be at the top. He's got to roll it back up the fucking hill to get there. Where it ends is where the next manager starts from. That's the truth. Ten Hag took over a team in 6th. By the end, it was 14th. Amorim's taken a team in 14th to 6th and getting more criticism. But hold on. Because again, like I said, people have been saying that that it was the worst year it was the worst year and all of that stuff. And I thought, shoot, man, was it? Was it really? It was bad. This was a shitty year for United, no doubt about it. Did you know that United won number here? Hold on. Give me a moment. United won 51 points in 2024. And United won 50 points in 2025. And I keep trying to make this point that we are where we deserved to be. We didn't just, this decline didn't just happen suddenly. This wasn't some shock. This wasn't some overnight, Amorim has taken us to the pits of despair. It's been like this. It was like this the whole year before he joined. It was this bad. That's the reality. Yeah, stats. That's our reality. It's just not being able to comprehend stats doesn't make you more intelligent. It makes you ignorant. Because stats are stats. I'm talking about points. That's games won. All that is saying, would it be better if I put up pictures of all the games we won? And then that's not stats. All stats are doing is taking that and putting it into a number. That's it. It's the same thing. We've been shit for a long time. Okay? Where we started was, how about this? Okay? This is the last 2 years. This is wins, right? Are wins now stats? Are we going to write off wins as stats? This is points in red, goals in light blue, expected points, expected goals. I've got it all. I got it all, okay? Because I'm looking at stats in terms of reality of what has actually occurred on the pitch. There was a gargantuan decline. A gargantuan decline prior to Ruben Amorim joining and even Ineos joining to where we are today. A gargantuan decline. Even this period here was worse than we are now. This is where Ineos came in, okay? Right here in the middle. Right here in this line, right here. This is since then. Everything's better. Literally everything is better. You know, this is where you start from. If you take over a job or if you were to take over a business and it had a 200,000 a year revenue, but someday in the past it used to have 1 million, and the next year you did 400,000, you wouldn't say, you know what? You failed because you used to because this business did 1 million 10 years ago. Okay. It used to do 1 million. So it was doing 200,000 when you took it over. Are any of them statistically significant? Yeah, genuinely. 30 points is statistically significant. 8 wins compared to 6 and 5 during 6-month periods is statistically significant. Goals going from 21 to 33 is statistically significant. Expected points being at the highest that they've been in 4 years is statistically significant. In fact, I don't know if you know this, but in all competitions, Ten Hag's final 12 months had a lower win percentage than Amorim's. But you don't see those stats. You don't see those stats at all. Because then you wouldn't be able to sit there and say and accept the reality of how bad United got and where we're starting from. The starting point is always valid. The starting point is all that matters, man. When you're asking to judge somebody, you know, when you're asking to judge someone on their performance, you don't judge them against someone else 10, 20 years ago. You judge them against where they came in. Where did they start? Where did they begin? It's not fair to show this to make Ineos look good. When are people going to get this about stats and such a gross misunderstanding of it? If the stats tell you something, you should probably listen, not say it doesn't match my opinion, therefore I need to throw it out. Is this by
half calendar year?
Yeah, half calendar year. Yes. This is calendar years because we're looking at the end of 2025, and it's been just over a year for Amorim, and I'm looking at the year before that as well. Okay? If the stats make something look a certain way, evaluate if the stats are bullshit or not, first of all, and then look at them and say, do they make sense? Instead of insisting that you're right and that you made up stats. Look at our defending that year. Look at our goals versus goals against, okay? Look at goals versus goals against. That's not XG. That's not XG. Goals versus goals against. We were flipped. Is anybody work in a business and you also have income versus expenses graph? If your expenses are higher than your income, that's really bad. And if someone comes in and flips it and now your income is better than your expenses, it's usually a good thing. We finally flipped after a year our goals over goals against to the positive. You know, again, if the facts bother you that so much, find someone who's just going to tell you what you want to hear, because I'm not. I never will. I never have, never will. Okay? So this is the reality of where we are. The rot has been for a long time. I could take this back years, right? And we probably see under Oli, no, actually, I think Jose maybe would be the peak. Because Jose's second season was probably the best. And then It's been a decline since then, a little bit of a bump under Ollie, and then a decline. It's a long term decline. That's where we started from. United are playing once a week. All right. Do you remember Ten Hag's record in Europe? Don't come to me with that shit. Ten Hag didn't win a game in Europe before getting sacked last year. We had 0 wins in Europe. 0. None. Okay? None. We got bounced out of the Champions League group against awful teams. Copenhagen, we couldn't beat. Okay? So no, don't give me the Europe argument. We were so bad in Europe in that sense. In the second half of last season, we weren't even in Europe during the first half of 2024. We got knocked out in the damn group stages. Amorim won every game in Europe last year. We were playing 2 games a week. You know? It's whatever. We were good in Europe actually last season under Amorim. We got to a final. So it wasn't 1 game a week. Now it's 1 game a week. And so of course our league performance is doing a lot better. We got fucking knocked out by Copenhagen. We couldn't beat 20 at home. Like, geez, man. It's just stupid. My point is when you look at the numbers, forget the managers. Look at the club. Forget the manager. I don't care who the manager is. This is progress. This is going in the right direction. This is going the right way. You know? It's going the right way. Yeah, we had 9 wins out of 12 in Europe. So if you're going to use the 1 game a week thing and that we used to have Europe, then add their European records in and you'll see it was different. Okay? Then suddenly all these arguments don't make any sense anymore. Okay? So, yeah. When you stop freaking out about one-off of games, then you can look at the overall trend, which is how you evaluate anything over a bigger picture. You have to look at the overall trend of the direction that it is going. And the comparison between 2024 and 2025 isn't even meaningful. And it's not even the fact that 2024 and 2025 are basically equal. It's that the end of 2025 and where we are today is the best it's been in years. More points, more goals, more everything than we've had in the last 2 years. Is it enough? Is a totally different question. You know? I remind people that during this segment here, the idea that this wasn't happening, we lost 4-0 to Palace at Selhurst Park. We lost 3-0 to Bournemouth at home because we were missing a few players. It's been this way for a long time. Our squad, when you take away the top, is still trash. It's still bad. It was bad under Ten Hag. It's bad under Amorim. We do not have a good squad in terms of depth. We have better players at the top end now. And beyond that, it's not any better than it ever has been. It's not a one-off game. It's been building up. Everton, West Ham, Wolves, Bournemouth. All right. Where would we be in the table if we won all of those games? That's the next question for you to understand, right? Where would we be in the table if we'd won all those games? Okay. So that's 2 points, 4 points, 7 points, 9 points. All right. If we had 9 more points, we'd be 1 off Manchester City. Okay. We'd be 1 point off of Manchester City if we'd won those games. All right. So we'd be in a title race. So then don't use them, because I'm not using them to defend. But saying that, well, those are why we're failing, No, that's what a sixth place team does. They lose those games. We are where we deserve to be. We're in sixth. That's what those teams do. That's what sixth place teams do. They slip on shit games. They lose bad games. They lose games they shouldn't. That's why they're in sixth. So I'm not sitting there going, oh, well, we could be in a title race. You're doing that, saying, well, it's bad because we've dropped points in all these games. Yeah, that's why we're in sixth, dude. That's why we're in sixth. That's what a sixth place team does. They lose games they shouldn't. That's why you're in sixth place. There are two types of team. Either you get a team that's massively overperforming, that's a small team, or a team that is underperforming from what your expectations are around here. That's the truth. You're right. We dropped all those points. And we should be expecting to, because that's where we are as a team. I'll give you an example in terms of sixth place sides, okay? You want to see it in action? Here's Aston Villa, all right? Aston Villa got sixth last year, right? Aston Villa got sixth last year. Okay. Aston Villa got sixth last year. What happened to them on the final day of the season? What happened to them on the final day of the season? The sixth place team. They lost to the 15th place side in the Premier League and lost out on Champions League to the 15th place side in the Premier League, Aston Villa, on the final day. You know why? Because that's what teams in sixth do. Sometimes they lose to teams they shouldn't lose to. That's reality. You just have to accept it. That's where we are, okay? We are where we deserve to be in sixth place. This idea that it's like, well, then we shouldn't have won against Liverpool. Then we shouldn't have won against Sunderland. Then we shouldn't have won against Chelsea because they're above us in the table. So it all balances out. That's why you look at the table and you go, that's with a judgment. Who else did Aston Villa lose to in sixth place? Ready? Crystal Palace. Who else did they lose to? Wolves. All right. They lost to Wolves last year. Sixth place team losing to Wolves. What? They lost to Nottingham Forest. Who else did they lose to? Oh, look, they lost to Tottenham 4-1. Okay. Now let's take a look at the Premier League in 2024 to 2025. Who was 15th, 16th, 17th? So the sixth place team last year also lost to 15th, 16th, and 17th. We haven't even lost. They lost to 15th, 16th, and 17th. That's what happens. Does that make Emery a shit manager? Does that make them a failure because they were in sixth? That they didn't beat all of these teams down in the table? No, that's why you're in sixth. That's what being sixth is. That's what happens. That's what happens. That's who you are. I'm not arguing we're great. That's why we're in sixth. You know, that's why we're in sixth, because we're not great. If we weren't great, we'd be in sixth. We wouldn't be in sixth. We'd be in the title charge. The question is instead of looking at these one-off games, are we overall where we deserve to be or not?
Happy New Year, James. May 2026 bring you rampant underlying metrics. Watch the blood pressure.
Thanks, Jimmy. Appreciate it. Thank you. You know, that's the point. Based on where we are, do we deserve to be higher up in the table or not? Is our squad good enough to be higher up in the table or not? That's the real question. I polled it at the start of the season and people said sixth. Why are we lying now and saying that we deserve to be better? You know, I polled it at the start of the season and most answers were that we should be around Europa League. That's where we are. So let's not twist things around here, okay? We've got shit performances. We've got things here that are going like bad too. Amorim makes mistakes every single day. Every single game he makes mistakes. Of course. We all know it. Of course, we all know it. We can all agree with that. That's fine. So does every manager. I'll show you a crazier stat. Are you ready for this? I'm going to show you the craziest stat of all. Here we go. Okay. And people are instantly going to take it the wrong way because you got to be able to be objective sometimes. How many points were Man City on last year, January 1st? How many points were City on last year, January 1st, with having a few injuries? How many? Here's your answer. They were sitting in 6th on 31 points last season. One more point than we have right now. Does that mean Ruben Amorim, Pep Guardiola? No, I'm talking about team. I'm talking about team. City were sitting on 31 points at New Year's. One more point than we have right now at New Year's last year. And what did City go and do? What did they do? They were missing Rodri. We don't even fucking have a Rodri. We have a Casemiro who can't hear 6 players running behind him. What did they do in January? They spent $250 million to get him new players, and he finished the league on the end of the season on 71 points. $250 million on players in January. At the start of the season, polls shown fans to be happy with 8th, and now they want top 4. Yeah, exactly. The goalposts are just ever shifting. The funny part is that the disappointment over these games is because we've been good enough that we actually think we could win those games. Like, we all genuinely think we've been, like, that's the crazy part if you flip this around. A lot of the disappointment is the fact that we've actually been good enough we could be in a title race. That we've dropped games we shouldn't have dropped. That we would have been in, like, a title race if we had won those games. The fact that people are even disappointed about that is an improvement, to be quite honest. We got $250 million in January. He improved the squad. He improved the squad dramatically in January to step up the table.
A tough position and his £1 billion squad, but slagging off Amorim and his £600 million squad on same points.
Amorim
window.
Amorim doesn't even have close to £600 million. He's got he spent 200. You know, but yeah, that was my next one because I love the Chelsea one. I've been shitting on the Chelsea project for an age. All right, here's Enzo Maresca. Okay, let's look at the numbers. Great point. Here's Enzo Maresca. Even if your numbers were off, he signed 51 players. Now some of them were free, so let's go with just the players with a fee. 37 players. And spent 709 million euros. To now they're thinking of sacking him or thinking of a split when he's at the same points as Amorim. If Amorim were to get another 350 million and 30 more players and we were at the same point, he should be sacked. Obviously. Like, duh. Because you know that Maresca wasn't in charge of transfer business. Neither is Amorim. But he has all these options to choose from to build his squad. Let's look at these squads. All right? Let's look at this squad. Let's look at this 11. Let's look at this 11 that drew Bournemouth the same time we drew Wolves, by the way. Let's look at this 11. Who's in their team? Well, Enzo Fernandez, Caicedo, Estevao, Palmer. All 4 right into the team. Delap's crap. Garnacho, crap. Malagusto, is he better or worse than Patrick Dorgu? You could make an argument. Is Chimpong better or worse than Dalot? You could make an argument. Is Fofana better and more experienced than the 1 million player that we got in Aiden Heaven that has to start there? Yes. Is Chalaba better than Lissandro coming back from an ACL injury? Yes. This was our team in this game. Which team was better? Which team was better? Look at this squad and lie and say that Maresca is succeeding, plucky, doing all right, versus this. Go ahead. Lie to me and say that, and lie to yourself. And then look at their bench. He brought on Reece James, Pedro Neto, João Pedro, Andre Santos, and Jamie Gittins, and left Tosin Adabari, I never get his name right, Benoit Badiashile on the bench. Here's what we brought on. Jack Fletcher, Lenny Oro, Bendito Mentato, and we left Fredrickson, Malacia, Fletcher, Lacey, and Cheeto on the bench. I don't care about this game. I'm talking about the reality of the options that they have. This bench would have made our starting 11. That bench would have been our starting 11. You could have started Reece James, Neto, Pedro, Santos, Jamie Gittins, Badiashile, Tosin, and Facundo Bonanote, and you would have arguably been better than the team we fielded in our starting 11. You can make an argument that this is a better 11 than we have to start with. You can. So my point is that that's where we need to be as a club, is to have those kinds of options. That's where Ineos and the ownership need to get us. We have to get there. We have to get there. But the reality is that
Maresca is doing mint and Amorim is shit. Winking face emoji.
But the reality is that the fact that we're even in the conversation is a little bit of a fucking miracle, to be quite honest. Like, point is, it's always relative to what's around you. And that, I think, people cannot accept, that what is around us is a lot better than us in terms of a squad, especially as soon as you start removing a few players. Here's a team that Liverpool were able to field to win 2-1 just this week, okay? Allison, Kirkes, Van Dijk, Konate, Frimpong, Gravenberch, Curtis Jones, McAllister, Wirtz, Chiesa, Ekitike. On their bench was Gakpo. Their bench is a little weak, no doubt. That's probably why they're struggling. Of course it's way better than our squad. Of course it is. Okay? Of course it's way better than our squad. It's always better than our squad. We have the 5th to 6th best team in the league. And we're in 5th to 6th. We're level on points with 5th. That's it. Maresca has probably... I don't know what he has, but it's a hell of a lot better than us. A hell of a lot better of a squad than ours. A hell of a lot more options. How many players from that Chelsea squad would you take? I think they've wasted a ton of money on their transfers for what it's worth. But how many players would you take in this squad? Even at full strength, how many would you take? I would take Palmer, Esteval, Caicedo, Enzo, Gusto, Fofana, Reece James, João Pedro, Andre Santos, and that maybe 9. I would take 9 players from their squad and stick them in our team. You know, no, Maresca's doing a terrible job. If Amorim had the team Maresca had, or even close, and we were on the same number of points, sack him yesterday. Absolutely sack him yesterday. 100%. It would be a huge, utter failure from Amorim. Absolutely. 100%. Here's where I'm at. Really, really simply, okay? Everyone but Garnacho, practically, yeah. Here's where I'm at, and it's really, really simple. I've got loads of doubts about Ruben Amorim. Loads of doubts about Ruben Amorim. So many. I've got so many doubts about some of the choices that he's made. I think he's made plenty of mistakes. I have no clue if in the long term he's going to be the guy moving forward. But like that, Genghis, I also accept reality. In fact, I think Ruben Amorim's done a ton of things that I'm really baffled by. Even as someone who liked and watched him at Sporting, I think he makes mistakes every single week. We can start with Casemiro. Another one where people kept hyping up Casemiro, saying how good he is, and then you see him and you go, Casemiro's one. I'm sitting there going, Ruben, you're blind. And so is everybody else who thinks Casemiro's been good for us. This is a disaster. Maybe if we'd subbed off Casemiro instead of Ugarte like we did against Newcastle, we would have ended up pulling that result out. I don't know. There's a lot of things I feel different. I feel he's getting wrong on a week-to-week basis. However, those are just my opinions. Those are just my feelings.
The ceiling of United's squad is fifth, but the floor is much, much lower.
Yes.
That's the issue. We have players that excel in one facet, but weak in others.
Totally. We don't have enough guys who do the basics. We don't have enough guys who do the simple things every game consistently. So as soon as it drops, it could go from being very good to very bad in a heartbeat. Okay? Yeah, Amorim subs, they confuse me. I've been asking for Dorgu on the right all season. Okay? So yes, I'll agree with that one. There's a lot of things I think he could do better. But I don't expect to agree with everything that a manager does. At all, actually. Mostly I look at it and say, are we getting better or not? And one of the things that I have learned in life is you don't stop improvement. When things are improving, one of the biggest mistakes you can ever make is to freak out. It doesn't matter if it's improving a lot or a little. As long as you're going in the right direction, you don't make drastic changes. We are improving. That is a reality. We're improving. It's just a fact. Why are we improving? You have to look at that. A big part of it is better players. Okay. If giving Ruben Amorim better players makes us play better, give him more players. And then the point where the improvement stops, change the manager. Totally fine. If the improvement stops, change the manager. You don't. It's not a guarantee, and it never is, that getting a new manager and giving them players will make you better. We gave Ten Hag more players and we kept getting worse. And he never reached the heights that Ole did consistently. It was worse and worse and worse and worse. Chelsea, Pochettino had them as the third best team in the league for their final 6 months. They won. It's the same with every club. They won more games during that period in Potter's final 6 months. Did you know this? Here's a crazy stat for you that has nothing to do with United. They sacked him. They put in Maresca. They spent a bunch more money. Chelsea have never won as many games in a 6-month period as they did under Poch in his final 6 months. They've never equaled the league form that Pochettino had. He started lower than Maresca. He didn't get them up that high. But his league form and his improvement was always going up. When they sacked him and they brought in Maresca, it has never equaled that. It has never gotten better. More players, more everything, more time. It has never gotten better. Do not underestimate improvement. Arsenal stuck with Arteta because of improvement. And look where it's got them. I argue he's reached his ceiling. They've stopped improving, but we'll see this season. If they don't win anything this season, you would argue that Arteta has probably reached his ceiling. The improvement has stopped. Now might be a time to change. But sacking Pochettino is really similar to people clamoring for Amorim to be sacked right now. We are much better than we were before, starting from a really low position, same as where Pochettino essentially took over. His first 6 months were poor. Second 6 months were a lot better. They made a mistake making a change then, and they've never gotten back to that level in terms of the league. We're at that exact same point right now. Just keep improving. But, this is why, and let's turn it into transfers, they have to give them more players because the improvement isn't magic. The improvement wasn't unknown. It's not because Amorim's the greatest manager who've ever lived. It has nothing to do with that. You win by building a great squad and having a manager that improves with it. That is what's happening right now. We need to build a better squad. If you go and give Amorim a bunch of players in January, like Pep got last year when he was on 31 points, and it doesn't scale, then you've got the wrong manager. Right now, we've given the manager more players, and it is scaling. Give him a few more. If it gets better, fine, good. If it doesn't, sack him. I've already said my opinion. If we added a midfielder in January and we don't get top 5, sack him. You can quote me on that too. Without a midfielder, he should be in 6th, or I would let him go. Because I'm looking at the relative nature of our team, where it deserves to be. If you give him a good player in January and the results don't get better, then he's the wrong guy. But if you don't do that, then you can't at that point. You're just left with questions. And then you could sack him and get the next guy. But why? It makes no difference. You sure can. It wouldn't change anything to me. But then what's it going to do? The next guy's not going to get better without players. It's not going to happen. We don't have a good enough team. And if you do sign the players and you have to sack them, so what? You just have a better team for the next guy. That's all good. You know? Ancelotti got 10th and 12th with Everton, went back to Madrid and won titles. Better squad. That's it. That's it. Managers, I think why people are disappointed. I understand why people are disappointed. I understand why people are upset. I understand where people are at. I think that it all stems back to a completely different opinion in everything that's actually far beyond the manager. People think Ineos have failed right now. A lot of people. Because of where we are. My argument to the alternative for that is the graph that I showed you, the reality of the situation, which is that when they took over, we were already at the bottom. It's been actually steady but chaotic improvement. We didn't get to do like a Chelsea with Abramovich, with a sale, where we could just clear the decks and pay 1.2 billion. We have to deal with the Glazers still being there. We've had to deal with their debt. We've had to deal with their weight on the club. We've had to deal with all of that. And we're trying to get by without it. And we've changed a lot in that period of time. We've changed a lot and actually improved a lot in that period of time. But it's not up to and back to the level that people want United to be. But why should it? We don't have a God-given right to be there. They started, just like a manager, they started with the club in the position that it was in when they took
over. In his
over.
first full season, Arsenal was 11 by Jan.
Correct, and 15th by Christmas. Ineos, like Amorim, like any manager, Ineos is the same. Their starting point is not Sir Alex. Their starting point is 8th under Ten Hag. Mountains of debt and the inability to spend. That's where we started. From there, the progress is up, even if slow. It has to continue. Nobody's saying the job is done. Nobody's saying it's a success. It's not a success until we get back where we're supposed to be, but we're in the throes of it. We're in the middle of a club-wide rebuild. I've said this many times over the last year. We are in the middle of this club-wide rebuild. Last season, we were sacking 400 people. This whole rebuild, we're in phase 1. And it's climbing up from the ashes. They won't be considered a success unless they get us all the way there. But we have improved, off the pitch and on it, significantly. From where they started. Not from how it was under Sir Alex Ferguson, or even pre-COVID, before our debt situation was 10 times worse. Okay? So that's what's on them now. In January, I probably am giving people a migraine for sure on it. But how do you do what the progress in statistics is due to improvements under Amorim? Maybe it's both. Ivan, it might be both. That's my point. I don't care. As long as it's working, don't make drastic changes. That's the point I'm saying in terms of that life lesson. And you will learn this over time if you haven't yet. When something is improving, you don't question it too much. Don't make drastic changes, but keep going. Okay? Now, as it turns into transfers for Ineos, and I went too long, so I'll obviously, we've got a lot of time in January to discuss all of this in moving forward. Their job now in January is get some fucking players. They have to. That's what I turn to. I think we're about at our top of where we can be with what we've got. Get more players. Get more signings. Get more people in the door. In January, don't care who it is. You've got to improve the quality of the team if you want to see better results. Otherwise, it's a coin flip as to whether we'll finish where we need to finish. I'd be curious to see if Mateta becomes an option in January. Our major targets otherwise aren't. Mateta is a striker we've been looking at. If we let Zirkzee go, which seems very likely, could we bring Mateta in? I'd be in favor of that signing. In the midfield, they really need to go and get somebody like Ederson and just get it done. He's available. It's possible. We can do it. It's very quiet. That's not necessarily a bad thing. United have been very quiet. People really don't necessarily know what's going on, but there's an intention to sign somebody, but at the same time, I am nervous as to whether we will, but at this point in time, because there's not a lot of signs that we will, but they have to. They've got to. I don't care if it costs more money. There's a cost benefit here that just makes sense. The football needs it, and it will benefit us financially for confirming that we're in these European places. They've got to go sign somebody. I think Ederson, Mateta could be opportunities in two different positions there. Gehi could be an opportunity at center back. Yes, there's positions that would be more impactful, but if you can get any of them, get one. It doesn't matter. Those are three names I would definitely keep an eye on. Ederson, Mateta, and Gehi, but then I would also still not lose sight of Baleba in case he comes back from AFCON and is like, guys, I want to go. And Brighton finally loosen up their grip on him and agree to somewhat of a reasonable fee, then we would do a deal in January. Those are the names right now to start the month that I would keep an eye on. in general. Okay. I appreciate all of the discussion today. I appreciate you all very much for being here. I appreciate the long drawn out talk here. I'm going to put out the podcast with Phil after this so you can watch it. There will be a pod, as I said, on Footy Within Edges channel later. Tomorrow, I'm going to do a year in review video and then something else, and we'll see. All right. Enjoy the rest of your day, guys. I appreciate each and every one of you. Happy New Year. Thanks for being here. And let's hope next year is even better. Okay. See you later, guys. Have a good one. I think let's see with Cunha what happens once we get a few more players around him back and a little more time. I have my worries, but with any new signings, let's see. Okay.